Welcome everyone to our latest edition of Stories for Healing. Those of you who have been here before know that the idea for this series is to address the divisions in our world, not by taking sides, not by telling people what they should or should not do, but to open our hearts and to learn to embrace and respect each other. Not only despite, but because of our differences. It's our differences that makes this world really interesting and worth living in, as long as we can manage them with respect. And as you also are coming to learn, this is a project that started less than 2 days ago. And already we have over 30 storytellers who've stepped up and said, I would like to contribute to this healing. I'd like to tell a story about healing, so that maybe we can encourage healing in each other and in ourselves. And these storytellers come from around the world. As you're about to see, Martin Manasse is here with us today. And he has a story that he's been itching to tell us for all of, I think, 5 hours. But we're very, very pleased to have him here as a very accomplished storyteller and someone who has a story to share. So Martin, please tell us a story.
Thank you. There were 2 kings, and they were enemies. And their fathers were enemies, and their grandfathers were enemies. In fact, it went back so far that people couldn't actually remember what the original dispute was about. But they were enemies, and it was the tradition that they should be enemies. And so they each kept an army by the border, and on the east side, the East Army, on the west side, the West Army, in case there should be an incident, but there never was an incident. And so the traders ignored it all and just moved across the border as they would, and the travelers did the same. And for Validad, that was wonderful, because Validad was a young, skinny man who lived in a mud hut near the border, just outside the city, surrounded by wild grass. And he would cut the wild grass, bag it up, and take it to the border, and sell it to the traders for their elephants and their camels and their horses and their donkeys. And they would give him a few coins, and he would take them home. He would buy the food he needed, the clothes he needed, and the rest, if there were any, he would throw down through a trap door in the floor of his hut, where they fell into a bowl. And that's how it was, and that's how it went on for years and years and years and years. And now, Validad is still skinny, and he still cuts grass, but he's old and he's wrinkled, and he's saying to himself, what happens if I can't cut grass anymore? And so he opened the trap door, and he lifted up the bowl. It was incredibly heavy. He was very surprised. And then he put it on the table, and very carefully, he emptied all those small coins out, and he started to count. And he counted them into the bowl until he had enough, he thought, to give him a generous allowance for the rest of his life. And then he looked at the table and saw that the heap of coins were not even half gone. And he thought, look at all this money. I don't need money. What will I do with money? I must find a good use for it. And so he put it into a sack, and he went into the city, and he went to the goldsmith who had the best reputation for making art in gold. And he said to him, what can you make me with this? And the goldsmith looked in the bag and sighed at all the small coins. And then he counted, and he counted, and he counted, and he was quite impressed. And he said, you know, I could make you something really beautiful. Oh, thank you, said Validad. Let me know when I can collect it. And a few weeks later, he was back, and he collected an exquisite bracelet, beautifully decorated. And the goldsmith said, any lady would be pleased to wear that on her wrist. Oh, thank you, said Validad. And he went to visit a merchant he knew very well, who'd been his customer for years. And he said, where are you off to next? Oh, I'm going to the East. Do you know anyone in the East who is, how do I describe it? You know, a really good person, a person who would put people before profit, who is not greedy and not angry and not hating it. I want a person who is really a fine person and who cares for the other people around and so on and so forth. I want to get rid of some spare money, and I have a present. Well, he said, listening to what you say, it sounds to me as though the Princess of the East is the perfect person, because she is actually very wealthy, but she uses her wealth to help the poor and the needy and all the sick, and she has a tremendous reputation for doing good works. Excellent, said Validad. Give it to her, but it comes anonymously, it comes without conditions, and I don't want anything in return. Fair enough. The princess was astonished to receive this gift and took it to her father. And the king said, no, 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 no. This is dangerous. This is dangerous. Somebody is giving you this beautiful thing anonymously. We will be in his debt, and then he will have power over us. No, no, no. We will pay the merchant, and we will send back a gift of greater value so that we are not in his debt. So Validad, having got rid of all his spare money, comes home and finds the merchant at his door with a horse laden with fine silks. What's this? He said. Oh, it's from the king of the East. But I didn't want anything back. I know, he said, but he insisted. Oh dear, where are you going next? I'm going to the West. Is there in the West someone whom you would regard as highly as the Princess of the East? Well, yes, there is the Prince of the West. Oh, excellent. Keep some of the silks for yourself and send the rest to the Prince of the West. And the Prince of the West was just as astonished as the Princess of the East had been. And again, he went to his father, and again his father said the same. We cannot be in debt to this man. We must pay the merchant, and we must send another gift back. And Validad arrived back at his house to find the merchant with 10 pedigree racehorses. What's this? He said. Oh, it's from the king of the West. Oh, no, no, no. He said, I want to get rid of this money. Please, please, keep 2 of the horses and send the rest to the princes of the East. Things went quiet for a little while, and then back there was the merchant. He had 20 donkeys, all laden with silver. And Validad was screaming like, this is so bad. I don't want this. I don't want this. Keep 4 of them and send the rest to the Prince of the West. And then it was quiet, and he was pleased. And then one morning he got up, and he saw coming from the west a massive cloud of dust. Oh, he said, a great caravan. I will get plenty of grass. And he went out and cut grass at great speed. But the caravan came straight to his house. 20 elephants, 20 camels, 20 horses, 20 donkeys, all laden with gold and silver and jewels, and the most amazing harnesses and saddles, jewel encrusted. And Validad was beside himself. What on earth am I to do? He said, they all keep sending me stuff. Keep 4 of each, he said, and send the rest to the Princess of the East. This is too much, said the King of the East. I need to meet this man. Oh, no, 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 said the merchant. I promised I would keep him anonymous. I override you, said the king. You will take me to him. Well, may I give him 2 days' warning of your arrival? Yes, that's fine. So the merchant went to Validad and said, in 2 days' time, the King of the East will be arriving to see you. But what am I to do? Said, look, I mean, I'm in rags. I'm old. Look, said the merchant, all this transaction of yours has made me a very rich man. I now have a fine house in the middle of the city. Come and stay in my house. We will give you some fine clothes, and you can meet the king there. And so very reluctantly, Validad went to that house, was dressed in fine clothes, and you can imagine what the neighbors felt like as the King of the East with the entire entourage came down to the house, and Validad came out to meet him. And the king got off his horse. Let's go and talk, he said. And they went inside. Now then, said the king, what is all this about? Why do you keep sending my daughter these expensive gifts? What do you want from her? Do you want to marry her? Oh, your majesty, he said, look at me. I'm old, I'm wrinkled. What would your beautiful princess possibly see in me? Well, then what do you want? And at that moment, there were fanfares and sounds of horses' hoofs outside, And they hurried out, and there was the King of the West arriving at speed. "Aha!" said the King of the East. "It's an ambush. You want to assassinate me." "No, no, no, no," said the King of the West. "There's a strange man here who keeps sending my son expensive gifts, and he sent me a message saying, would I please get here as soon as possible? So here I am. Let me introduce the Crown Prince." Oh, yes," said the King of the East. "Let me introduce the Crown Princess." The eyes of the prince and the eyes of the princess met. But that is another story. The historians say that there was a great wedding, and that from then on, the East and the West lived in peace and harmony, and that all this came about because of the diplomacy of a simple grass cutter. So what became of Validad? Well, did he stay in the house with the fine clothes and the servants? He didn't even think of it. He went straight back to his mud hut and carried on cutting grass for as long as he was able. Thank you.
Oh, wonderful, wonderful. Let me restore this here. Thank you so much. Martin, what can you tell us about the roots of that story?
Well, I found it in a book which I bought after I'd had a heart attack 22 years ago. And it was one of those daft things. We'd gone away. My brother had very kindly said that he and his wife would look after our children. And we went off and stayed in a very small and very beautiful bed and breakfast. In fact, it was bed and breakfast. It was evening meal as well. And there was a small town nearby. And I said, let's go into the small town and let's look at the antique shops and see what there is. And my wife said, no, I don't want to do that. I've been driving all the time. So I said, please. And she gave in. And then we went round, we found nothing, and we were leaving when I said, oh, there's a bookshop over there. And I found the bookshop, and in that bookshop, we found a book called In the Ever After, which was written by an American, I think, a psychologist. And it's stories about older people, you know. Mm-hmm. And it was in there, and I thought, yeah, I'm not quite sure about this. So I Googled it. And Google told me that the best possible version was in what is called the Brown Fairy Book. I don't know. Do you know the fairy books?
Yeah,
there are many, many colors of them, yes. And I have the Brown Fairy Book, so I looked it up, and that was much better. But there were still all sorts of things in it I didn't like. So then I started to adapt it. And eventually I told it to my son, who has a degree in philosophy and is incredibly intelligent. And he said to me, you're missing a key point. Mm. Surely, if there are anonymous gifts arriving to a child of a royal house, the king or the queen would be suspicious of what the motives were. And from then on, it was plain sailing. Yeah. And so that's how the story came. So it is actually mine. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And that's how I made it. But of course, it's from my heart to your heart with love. Right. And you can take what you want from it. If you feel inclined to retell it, please take it into your heart, make it your own, so that when it comes out again, it comes from your heart and not from my heart. But it's an unconditional gift. And I love it. I think it's a great story. And it's
a beautiful story. It's a beautiful story. And I think it also helps as we tell these stories, because they all come from our hearts, right? By whatever route they've found themselves there. That's their ultimate point of departure. And but to know some of the path preceding it is always a little special.
Someone asked me what the moral of the story was. I said, don't ask me about morals. I offer you the story. You take what you want, do what you like with it. But remember that a story is only a set of symbols. The truth behind the story is the bit that really matters. Yeah. And that is for each one of us to find in his own way. I love it. I love telling stories. I love the people I tell stories to. It is pure act of love. And I can indulge myself because at 82, it's just amazing. So thank you for the opportunity, Jim.
Thank you very much. And let me just close out by reminding people that this is something we're going to be doing every day. If you're twice a day, if you keep clocks on the East Coast of the United States, it's at 2:30 and 8 o'clock in the evening. We've had some cries of agony from the Far East who want to find their way in, and we'll figure out what to do about that. But at least for the next 3 weeks, we have storytellers for all of those moments coming forward and being ready to share stories as Martin has with us from heart to heart. And I think my wish and my prayer for all of you, I'm sure I share with Martin, is that your hearts are open to receive this and pass it on. So thank you. And I look forward to seeing you later this evening. Thanks again, Martin.
Good night.